What can a promise mean to a community? Well, it depends on who made the promise, what the promise was for, and for how long it will be held. For the Kalamazoo Promise, it was a group of anonymous donors who asked themselves a simple question: what could we do to invest in youth to transform our community? With that in mind, the Kalamazoo Promise was announced by Dr. Janice Brown in 2005 with the declaration that students who graduate from Kalamazoo Public Schools and meet the basic requirements will receive up to 100% of tuition and mandatory fees paid for at any in-state public community college or university. This sent a shockwave throughout the community and country as a movement sparked with Promise programs launching all over the United States. The cultural impact was felt perhaps most significantly when President Barack Obama visited Kalamazoo to deliver the commencement speech. Despite the external excitement, the early years saw the promise administered behind the scenes by a single man, Bob Jorth. Today, with a staff featuring over 50% Promise scholars, the Kalamazoo Promise has now moved into our new home in the heart of downtown Kalamazoo. Designed to be a hub for student support and community collaboration, thousands of students have used their scholarship to earn post-secondary degrees and vocational certificates. This investment in human capital has been promised in perpetuity, which means it's not going away, and there's much more work to be done. But together, with our community, our Promise team, and Kalamazoo Public Schools, we will strive to help every student find their path. So what can a promise mean to a community? Everything.
Welcome. Thank you all for coming out tonight. It's a little nicer night than last night, although still not ideal, but better inside. Just a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, I'm Bob Jorth. I'm the Executive Director of the Promise. I have had the privilege of being with the Promise since it started, and I'm proud to say that we have 20 staff members now, and 2/3 of them are Promise alum. And many of them are around this room tonight. There is a coat rack and restrooms just out here to your left. There are soft drinks and water back in the corner. Please help yourself if you'd like. At the end of the presentation, we will have some time for questions. We will also do some tours of our facility if you would like that. And there are some Chromebooks set up if you want to do any of the things that we talked about tonight here as part of the presentation. So with that being said, let me get started. The Kalamazoo Promise was and is a gift to the Kalamazoo community. And it's a gift from anonymous donors to the families of the Kalamazoo Public Schools. And the goal of this gift is to educate our community, our youth. And with the belief that a community that is better educated is more vital, not only economically, but socially as well. And so the donors have made this extraordinary gift. And I guess at this point, just out of curiosity, how many of you here have siblings or older children who have already utilized or are utilizing the Promise? Great, good. To date, we've had over 7,100 students utilize their Promise. And in the first 17 years, this says we've awarded over $177 million. That actually is out of date. We're now over $180 million. And we expect to award approximately $17 to $18 million in scholarships this school year. So it's an extraordinary opportunity for our community, our youth, and for all of you. The The other thing I'd like to start out with is a reminder that although the students and families of Kalamazoo Public Schools are the recipients of the Kalamazoo Promise, we are not a part of the Kalamazoo Public Schools. We are a separate 501c3 nonprofit organization. I say that because if you have complaints or concerns about the Kalamazoo Public Schools, we would encourage you to take them politely and civilly to the Kalamazoo Public Schools. And if you have complaints or suggestions for the Kalamazoo Promise, we welcome all of your suggestions and wonder what you could possibly complain about. So anyway, I say that in jest and seriously about working with the Kalamazoo Public Schools, because this gift is extraordinarily generous. Part of the reason the donors are anonymous, this is my understanding, is because they want the community and the families who receive this to leverage this gift to make this community a better place to live and the schools a better place to educate our youth. So, in all seriousness, please advocate for the schools, for your students, and for the community. And vote in a couple weeks. That would be good too. So, at this time, where are my coaches? Right here. Are you going to come up? All right. They tried to dodge this. I don't know. So, I mentioned that we have several alumni working for the Kalamazoo Promise. We specifically have these three young people. They don't sometimes think they're that young, but trust me, they're very young. Who are coaches in each of our high schools. They are all recipients and users of the Kalamazoo Promise, and I would like them to just take a few minutes to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their Promise journey.
Hello. I'm David Moore, the Promise Pathway coach at Lower North High School, born and raised in Kalamazoo. I attended Kalamazoo Valley Community College where I utilized my Promise. After that, I attended Albion College. At that time, they didn't have an MCA, so I wasn't able to utilize it there. But it's something that I think is very special and unique about that, that students can attend, public and private universities. Kalamazoo Central graduate. Him is basketball coach at Lower North High School, so I recognize some familiar faces. I look forward to, working with myself, the team, and it's amazing people here on this journey to help students utilize the Promise. Take advantage of this scholarship. It's very helpful. It was helpful for me in my time, and I hope it will be helpful for all of the faces in here.
Hello, my name is Melissa Nesbitt, and I serve Phoenix and Kilp High Schools. I was previously the Lower North coach, but I've transitioned over. Born and raised in Kalamazoo Central grad. I attended Michigan State. I was one of those students, first generation college student. I didn't have anybody to help me navigate what college was. I just kind of got into Michigan State because I was kind of smart in high school. But after a couple of years, I dropped out. I stopped out. And they were kicking me out at the same time because of my grades. But I came back home, I traveled, I worked, and I just wasn't making enough money. So I'm like, okay, well, let me use this gift that was given to me. So my first semester GPA at Michigan State was a .84, like less than a month. But I graduated with a 3.04. So it was a climb, it was a struggle. So I'm here to help alleviate those bumps in the roads that I had to take. So if we got any Phoenix families, please direct your students to me. It does take a village, it does take us and the parents. So encourage the students to complete their applications, register their accounts, and complete their scholarship acceptance form. I will let you know that there are multiple steps, no GPA requirements, just help you.
Good evening. My name is Trinae Dunnigan. I am the Promise Pathway Coach at Kalamazoo Central High School. I am a KPS student, K through 12, also graduated from Kalamazoo Central. And then I went on to get my bachelor's from Grand Valley State University. Also a first generation, so I kind of hit those same bumps to where I was just kind of confused on what I was supposed to be doing. I kind of hit rock bottom my first semester. I was an above average student in high school, and then I got a 1.5 my first semester. So I called home crying, thinking like, I can't do this, I need to come home, and just not for me. But luckily I had parents that were like, no, you're gonna finish what you started, and it's more than capable of you to finish, and I did. So my main goal is just always to be for the students what I wish I had in high school, and I definitely believe in paying it forward. So it's definitely an honor to be sitting up here and working for the organization. And then just because we all have our respective locations, like if you see any of us in the community, don't hesitate to just ask questions. We don't all have the same knowledge, so. And that goes for any of the Promise staff, not just the coaches as well.
Great, thanks. Now you can go sit out there. You sit up here in front of everybody. So I mentioned our team. This is close to the whole team, although we have 2 new members joining us here in the next 30 days. They also are Promise alum. And so we will have 22 people working with us. The donors have been exceptionally generous in helping us expand our team, really because the Promise isn't successful unless you, the scholars, are successful. And so we know it's more than just the money that gets students to and through college. And certainly many of our students face a very varied and complex obstacles to not only accessing their post-secondary education, but completing it. And so with our larger staff, we're able to work more directly with more students, work more with the community as the community tries to get students ready to take advantage of this gift and to return and keep more of our students here in Kalamazoo. First thing I want to talk about is, well, let me preface this by saying, so we're going to talk a little bit about the scholarship in general, about the process the students need to go through to access that scholarship, and then what happens once you're in college. I will try to keep this to 40 minutes, and then we'll have questions at the end, and we'll see how I do. So first of all, if you don't know how to be eligible for the Promise, you can't access the Promise. And so the eligibility for the Promise is pretty straightforward. You have to be enrolled in the Kalamazoo Public Schools for at least all of high school, and while you're enrolled, you must be a resident of the Kalamazoo Public School District. The Kalamazoo Public School District is a very weird boundary. So there is actually a small portion of the city of Kalamazoo around the edges that are not in the Kalamazoo Public School District. And then there are portions of 3 townships that are included in the Kalamazoo Public School District. I say that, first of all, if you're here and you're in the district, I would encourage you not to move, period, at least until June. Because every year we have 2 or 3 students who lose their eligibility for the Promise their senior year. Because the parents, for whatever reason, decide to move out of the Kalamazoo Public School District. They may keep their students in KPS, but once you leave the district, you lose your eligibility. So if something comes up, you think you need to relocate, whatever, please work with our coaches to understand the implications of that, and we can maybe help connect people with community resources to make sure you can maintain that eligibility. The other requirement is that you graduate from one of these KPS high school programs. And there are 5 of them now listed here. And so that's how you become eligible and stay eligible for the promise. Pretty simple. Using your promise, there are now over 60 institutions, I believe, that you can use your promise at. I don't have an exact count, I should. But you can use your promise at any of the state-supported community colleges or universities. I believe there are 48 of those. And then there are 14 private colleges that are part of what's called the Michigan Colleges Alliance, MCA, you can see that you can also use the scholarship at. And what's not listed here is we also have agreements with some trade unions, and we've also started to develop some training programs in the community that are offered that you can use your promise at. While you're in your post-secondary journey, you must maintain a 2.0 GPA. This is not a requirement for high school. There are a lot of people who think you have to have a 2.0 GPA in high school to be eligible for the promise. There is no GPA requirement in high school. You need to graduate with a diploma from KPS. If you do that, you're eligible for the promise. If your GPA is below 2.0 in high school, what that does is it limits where you can probably use your promise, because a lot of institutions probably won't let you in right away with a GPA below 2.0. But there are lots of opportunities for all of our graduates to keep KPS. The other requirement once you're in the post-secondary arena is you need to be a full-time student. And what that means is typically taking 12 credit hours a semester, and a typical class in college is 3 or 4 credit hours. So this is typically 3 to 4 classes a semester. We do make some exceptions. We do not require full-time status at KBCC. And on a case-by-case basis, we will waive it anywhere else. We also waive it during the summer terms. Most of you know your eligibility, but here's the little chart that shows that students who are only in KPS for high school get 65%. Students who have been in K through 12 will get 100%. The 65% is still an extraordinary amount of scholarship. I have 2 children who are not very childish anymore, but they graduated from KPS before the promise, and I can assure you, we would have loved to have 65% for them. So, anyway. Eligibility, how long do you have to use your promise? So students, there are 3 limits to eligibility for the promise. The first is 10 years from the date of high school graduation. The second is, I talked about credit hours. We provide up to 145 credit hours of coverage within that 10-year window. And the third is a bachelor's degree. You do not have to be pursuing a bachelor's degree to use your promise. It's whichever one of these 3 things happens first is when the eligibility expires. The 10 years and the 145 credits actually provide a huge amount of flexibility, because the promise is good for certificates and associate's degrees and bachelor's degrees. So students can get multiple certificates, multiple associate's degrees during that 10 years period and with 145 credits. There's something we talk about, stackable credentials. So for some students, it works best for them if they get a certificate first, because it fits with their career path. And in some cases, it also helps support them with their other expenses while they're finishing the rest of their program. You know, so we have students who, for instance, want to go into the medical field and get a CNA certificate, a certified nursing assistant certificate, or they get a certificate in phlebotomy. And so there's lots of ways to utilize the promise. Our tagline is your path, your promise. That's one thing we want you to really understand, work with your coaches to understand all the options, because I do not believe that there's any student who graduates from KPS who cannot use the promise to advance their future in a positive way. So, what do we pay for? It's pretty straightforward, really. The simple one is tuition, which is basically the cost of taking classes. And I mentioned credit hours. And so a bachelor's degree requires as a minimum 120 credit hours. And when you hear the 4 years, the traditional way to get a bachelor's degree, which by the way is not really the norm. Everybody puts it out there like the norm. But the tradition would say you take 15 credit hours a semester, 2 semesters a year, for 4 years, and you have a bachelor's degree. That is not true for the vast, vast majority of our students. So the flexibility we have allows students to go at their own pace, whether that be academic, social, emotional, economic, whatever. So the tuition, because we pay a fixed percentage instead of a dollar amount, that means that students can find the best fit for their aspirations. So if KBCC is the best fit to start, you know, $2,000 to $3,000 a year, because credit at KBCC is probably around $125, $150 now. The credit hour, I've kind of lost track of it. And so you can do a year for just a few $1,000s. However, you go to a university like Western Michigan University, and you're talking $400 or $500 a credit hour. And the amount of money that you would pay at KBCC for a full year of education, well, for a semester, will basically get you one class semester. So, but if you get 100% of the promise, it doesn't make any difference, because we're going to pay it. And if you want to go to the University of Michigan, we'll pay it there. A semester in the engineering program in either Western or U of M is now over $10,000 a semester. And then on top of that, we have the agreement with the private colleges. And, you know, K College is probably $60,000 or more a year now. We don't pay that full amount. We'll talk about that in a minute. But if you get 100% of the promise, you can go to K College tuition free. And so this scholarship is worth tens of thousands of dollars. We had our first student this last year where we paid over $100,000 towards their bachelor's degree. And if you saw the slides before this, the most recent classes that are completing their bachelor's degree were averaging $65,000. So that's average. That means there's a lot of kids over that. So this is an extraordinary opportunity. I think our alum will talk about their classmates in college and how envious they were of this opportunity that the Kalamazoo Public School students have. All right, beat that to death. Mandatory fees. This gets a little more trickier, and we use as a definition the same definition that the state uses. And that way, no matter what school you go in the state of Michigan, they have a definition that they understand that is used by the state that we can use to say we'll pay those fees. Essentially, what that says is that a mandatory fee is a fee that's charged to every student at that college or university. So it's not for a specific class We don't cover studio fees, class fees, lab fees. At Western Michigan University, they have an aviation program. We don't pay the flight fees, which are really attractive. We still have students who do that, which is great. So that's what mandatory fees are. A lot of schools, a fair number of schools don't have any mandatory fees. Grand Valley, Michigan State do not have any mandatory fees, I believe. Western has a lot of mandatory fees. It's just the way they structure things. Their tuition is a little bit lower because they basically break out things into fee areas. So if you go to Western Michigan University, your first semester there, your fees will probably be over $1,000. And if you get 100% of them, it's covered by promise. All right. What don't we pay for? Room and board, and I still don't know why they continue to use the term board, because I don't think anybody knows what that really is, but that's food for anybody who's under the age of 50, I guess, maybe 40. We don't pay for books or parking, and parking at these schools can get pretty pricey. Class and lab fees, as I mentioned, we don't pay for application fees. This is a common question that we get. So application fees are your responsibility. However, if application fees are a barrier for you, most colleges and universities will either waive the fee or reduce that fee. Your coaches can help you access those kinds of relief. So don't let application fees keep you from applying to the schools that you want to attend. Work with your coaches. We don't cover these things, and that's why we want to make sure students access other financial aid. You know, books can easily be over $1,000 a semester. And these other expenses that we talked about. If you go to any of the private schools, they're all residential colleges. You have to live on campus. So there are going to be housing fees and things like that. So apply. FAFSA is a federal application for free student aid. And if you haven't filled it out, do it as soon as you can. For many of our students, they are eligible for what's referred to as a Pell Grant. And I believe that's about $6,000 a year, right? Of aid, which will pay a pretty significant portion of room and board. So definitely do that, and it's free aid, so you're not borrowing money. The Kalamazoo Community Foundation has about 40 or 50 different scholarships that are available just for local students, and they don't get enough applications for those. And they have one application for all those scholarships. I like to remind people that I don't believe there's anything such as a small scholarship. A $500 scholarship, if it takes you 8 hours to apply, which it probably won't, and you get it, you have earned over $100 an hour for that time that you put into it. And that may cover your books for a semester. There are a lot of churches, schools, credit unions, banks that have scholarships for families or students within those organizations. Students, if you have a part-time job at a lot of the national chains, they have scholarship opportunities. So, you know, keep your eyes open and, you know, watch for notifications about these other opportunities and take advantage of them. These other opportunities I briefly mentioned, I'll touch on them a little bit again. We have agreements with 2 unions, the Carpenters and Millwrights and the Electrical Worker Union. We also treat the Michigan Career and Technical Institute as a community college. It's a state-funded program. A lot of our students don't need our assistance to go there, but if you do, we cover that. We have created with the community these training programs over the last few years, a Google IT certificate program, a CNC program, and a certified nursing assistant program. These are all short-term trainings, typically 6 months or less, that will get you in and get you a decent paying job that at least can get you started on your way in your career. Private colleges, just a little bit of information here because it's slightly different the way it works. You use the same promise application process as you do for any of the other schools. What's different is we don't pay the full rate. So like I said, you know, K is approximately $60,000 a year. What we do is we pay the same amount as the University of Michigan School of Good Mornings. And this year, that's nearly $18,000. So if you get the promise, and you get 100% of the promise, we will pay those dollars to these schools. And our agreement with the schools is they will make up the rest of that tuition and fees in free aid. Now, we don't stipulate what that free aid looks like. It may be grants, it may be scholarships, they can do whatever they want, but it has to be free. And so the 100% is pretty straightforward. The thing they're keying on here is if you get 75% of the promise or less than 100%, you don't pay 25% of the full tuition and fees. You pay 25% of the Michigan rate. So the schools still make up their full portion of the tuition and fees for every promise student. And you just pay 25%. In this case, that will be $4,446 that you will have to cover with the other aid. In some cases, MCA may end up covering more of that because they work harder than anybody else to get our students, frankly. And so, but they're not obligated to cover that for our students who are less than 100%. It's pretty straightforward. And we have 221 students at private colleges this fall. So over 100 at K College, which is extraordinary. These are the 14 schools. I think they're all over the state. There are none in the UP. All right, now the process to get the promise, and we're going to get a little break from listening to me talk here in a second, so hold on to your seats here. There are 3 steps to this process, and I'm going to emphasize that for the next several minutes. We seem to be pretty good about the first 2 steps because they happen right away. The 3rd step is where we run into trouble. And I don't know, it's not a really hard 3rd step, but for some reason, we walk away and, senioritis, or there's just so much going on that sometimes we forget what that 3rd step is. What you need to remember tonight and through the rest of this school year is that there's 3 steps. And then when you forget, if you forget what the 3rd step is, you go to your coach and they will help remind you what that step is. So we're going to go through these 3 steps. We have 3 short videos that are available online that are available so we can go back and refresh your memory on that. Let's see what we can do here.
Hello, my name is Melissa Nesbitt, and I am the lead pathway coach here at the Kalamazoo Promise. And today I'm going to show you how to register your Promise account. You're going to start by logging on to KalamazooPromise.com. From the main page, you're going to click on Account Login. And then you're going to click on Register for an Account. Enter your first legal name, your last name, your date of birth, your KPS ID, and your personal email, because your KPS email will expire once you graduate. Continue. Create your password and create your account. If you happen to get this message, don't worry. Someone from The Promise will contact you within 24 to 48 hours to help you register your account. Just enter the high school that you graduated from or the high school that you plan to graduate from. Also enter the year you graduated or the year you plan to graduate. Enter your phone number and submit it. And that is how you create your Promise account.
Turn this back on, I guess. So the registration process, because of COVID and the desire to move into the 21st century, we've moved everything to our website, so that everything has to be done online now. And which is a plus for us and for you. It helps us stay in contact with everybody. It's pretty straightforward. The one thing that as we get ready to go into the application video, once you set up your account, each time you log in, there is a two-part authentication. So you will be sent a code. You can choose either a text message or an email to get a code so you can log in. And we are very serious about the privacy of all our records for all our students. And so that's just part of assuring that happens. Once we do the registration, then we move on to the application, and we have another wonderful video.
Hi, I'm Trinae Dunnigan, and I am the Promise Pathway Coach at Kalamazoo Central High School. In this video, I will be showing you how to fill out your Kalamazoo Promise application. You will want to start off by going to kalamazoopromise.com. Once you are on the main page, you will want to hit account login. Here you will want to put in the email and password you created when you registered your account. Once you're logged in, you will see your name and general Promise information. To the left of the screen, you will locate the main menu and you will select Forms. Once you're on the Forms page, you will see Kalamazoo Promise application listed as the first form. You will navigate to the right and click Start Form. Once the application is on the screen, you will proceed to fill out general information such as your address, phone number, and email. Some of this information will be auto-filled, so double check to make sure that it is correct. In the next section, it will ask you about your KPS continuous enrollment. If at any point you left KPS and returned, please enter the grade of when you returned to KPS. For example, if you attended KPS kindergarten through 4th grade and you left your 5th grade year but then returned in the 6th grade, you would want to put the number 6 in the first section. Next, you will want to put in your graduation month and year, and then also select the high school you'll graduate from. In the next section, please select at least one school of interest from the drop-down menu. If you are unsure about where you want to go, we've pre-selected KVCC for you. Please note this question is just to gauge your interest. Selecting these schools does not commit you to anything. The unchecked box below should only be checked if there was an interruption in your KPS attendance or your KPS residency. In the case that there was, please check the box and provide a brief explanation below. Then you will provide your signature and hit Next. This will take you to our pathway survey. Filling out this general information will help us better assist you with your Promise journey. And that's how you fill out your Kalamazoo Promise application. If you have any further questions, please contact the Kalamazoo Promise office.
Couple things. When you choose schools, I would highly recommend that every student filling out their application
select both KVCC and Western Michigan University. Even if you don't intend on going there as your primary school, a lot of our students attend Western and KVCC at some point in their journey, either during summer school or to pick up a class, or maybe they transfer back, whatever. It just makes it a lot simpler if you do that, and it just makes it for you and for the students. The other thing that I want to briefly touch on here is we do have an appeals process, because a number of our students, you know, with the poverty rate that we have in Kalamazoo, that creates a lot of moving. And it can also cause a lot of turmoil, not necessarily moving within the district. And so things happen that interrupt the student's eligibility. And so we are not trying to not give out scholarships. We are trying to give out as many scholarships to as many graduates as possible. And the appeals process allows us the opportunity to do that. So as part of the application process now, there is a checkbox, and you can initiate an appeal in that process. What you really need to do, if you have an interruption in your history with KPS, I recommend talking to your coach. They will walk you through all this appeals process. It's pretty straightforward. We have an appeals committee that meets 3 times a year, December, May, and August. We try to get as many of these appeals for the current class done in December as possible, because that allows you to know exactly how much, what percentage you're going to get. So when you're looking at offers from various schools, you can compare the offers at the right rate. I will say approximately 10% of all graduates from KPS over the life of the promise have used the appeals process. So it's a pretty significant number, and most of them are successful. Not all, but most. The other thing that I want to briefly touch on, because there was some controversy about this a few years ago, concerning homeless students and them not getting the promise. If a student is coded as homeless by KPS, and KPS has a homeless liaison, and their federal legislation defining what that is. McKinney-Vento is the legislation. And unfortunately, in KPS, we have a lot of students who are housing insecure and homeless. But for any period of homelessness, we do not treat that as a lapse. Okay, the residency, if somebody has to live in Portage while attending KPS because of a homeless situation, we ignore that period as far as lapse requirements. Now, we still have a lot of students that are home housing insecure. And sometimes parents have to make some really tough decisions. And I will say, remember I talked about engaging in the community as part of being back, or being part of this gift. We all need to advocate for more housing resources in this community, because it is a serious problem. If you sit in our office and look across the street here every day, we get to see it on a day-to-day basis, unfortunately. But if you know somebody who doesn't think they're eligible for the promise, make sure they understand there is an appeals process, and get them connected with one of the coaches so that they can help them through that process. There's a really good chance that we can do something, either to get them eligibility or to improve the percentage that they have. So, after we get the applications, we will review the application to make sure that everything, what I should say, so the appeals committee, one last thing about the appeals committee. So it is not promise staff, it is community members. And we present the appeals to those community members,
They make the decision. They do not know who the student is. All the appeals are submitted to them blind. So we just explain the situation and they make a determination. They are almost as bleeding heart liberal as I am, and so they will try as hard as they can to find a way to get these awards. But sometimes, unfortunately, they can't. But it's a great group of people, and we appreciate their service. Once we get the application, we'll review it, make sure it's complete. Now that it's all online, they're almost always complete. But we will look at the eligibility. We get the KPS enrollment history from KPS every year, with very good records. And if we have an issue with what you think your eligibility is, we will most likely, the coaches, we being the coaches, will reach out to you and ask you about the situation and make sure that you understand where we think the issue is. And then we can determine whether or not the records are wrong or whether we need to utilize the appeals process. You should get a written response from us within 2 weeks of completing your application. We have been receiving applications since the beginning of the school year. We have just started sending those out. We typically wait for these meetings before we send out the responses to those applications. Now that we've had these meetings, if you don't get something back from us within a couple of weeks, something probably has gone wrong. And so reach out to the coach. They can check the database, see what's going on, and make sure that we're all on the same page and get things clarified. This is what the certificate looks like, indicating that we've approved the application. It basically regurgitates the information you put on your application about where you're interested in going. By the way, the schools that you select on the application get to see your promise information. So it allows them to recruit you, knowing that you have the promise. And these schools are like any other business. They like people with money. And I don't care how poor you are in Kalamazoo, if you have the promise, you're wealthy for these schools. They love students who come with 100% of their tuition covered because they are all stretched for funds too. So, put down the schools that you're interested in going, and it will help them know that you're interested. All right, the third step is the scholarship acceptance form. Basically, this form lets us know where you want to use your funds. We are not clairvoyant, and there are a lot of graduates of KPS who have thought that we were clairvoyant and have forgotten this third step. And we cannot and will not pay any school until we have this done, and we'll talk about that again after this wonderful video. This does not look like Batavia, but this is Batavia. This is the video. Where was the video? There.
Hi, my name is Max Offerman, and I'm the Promise Pathway Coach at Loyal Oaks High School. Today, I'm going to be showing you how to fill out your scholarship acceptance form, otherwise known as SAF. You fill out your SAF after you've been accepted into your school of choice. You'll also need to have registered your Kalamazoo Promise account and completed your Promise application prior to submitting your SAF. To fill out your SAF, go to kalamazoopromise.com. Click Account Login in the top right corner. Once you're at the login screen, enter the email and password that you created before. Once you're logged in, find the Forms tab from the navigation menu. From there, the scholarship acceptance form will be the second one on the list. Once you find the SAF, click Start Form to begin filling it out. The SAF is a signed agreement between you, the Promise, and your school of choice. We receive your grades and some personal information in order for us to cover your tuition. On the SAF, All the spaces marked with an asterisk are required to be filled out in order to submit the form. On the SAF, select your school of choice, your start date, and your student identification number given to you by your school. At this point, you'll need to already have the student ID number assigned to you by your post-secondary institution of your choice. This can traditionally be found in your acceptance letter from your school or by contacting the admissions office. We encourage everyone to use contact information that matches the home address they use on their college application. Once you've input the required information on your SAF, you will sign at the bottom using your finger or your mouse and click Next to continue on to the START survey. The information submitted on the START survey is all confidential and highly encouraged so that we may continue to support you during and after your post-secondary education. After the survey, you may submit your SAF. To confirm your submission was successful, go back to the Forms page, and to the right of the scholarship acceptance form, it should have the date that it was submitted. You can also select the tab that says Your Submitted Forms, and you should see the scholarship acceptance form there. And that's how you submit your scholarship acceptance form. If you have any other questions, please talk to the pathway coach at your high school.
Come back to this. Couple things. On both the application and the scholarship acceptance form, we've added short surveys to them. The surveys are there for two pretty distinct purposes. The primary one being, we want to know how we can better serve the students to help you access successfully your post-secondary education. So particularly on the scholarship acceptance form, some of those questions are very, very personal. And you're not obligated to answer any of those questions, but if you are able to and open to doing that, that will help us serve you. And it will also, the second purpose is, while we have a staff of 22 people, it still isn't enough people to serve every student as much as we'd like to. So we're constantly trying to figure out which students really need more of our assistance. And so we're using this information not only to identify current students, but to help us predict in the future what students we may want to make sure that we're watching as they go through this process. So we appreciate everybody helping us with that process. It's all confidential. It's not shared out beyond, we aggregate some data, but the personal, who you are, how you responded is not shared outside of our office. We will not and cannot pay the Kalamazoo Promise without both of those forms. Privacy is important not only to us, but to all the post-secondary schools. There's FERPA requirements. It's much like HIPAA for medical that we are obligated to fall within. And so if we don't get these, we will not pay a scholarship to the school that you want to use the Promise at. And that's the reason to remember the 3 steps. And again, let's see here. Yeah, just because, yeah. So that's the process. You're in our new building, KalamazooPromise.com. We have the QR codes here, so you can go through that process if you haven't already. We have Chromebooks in the back if you want to do this at the end of the meeting. A little bit about the student portal and the account that you set up. So you set it up to complete these forms, but you also do it to help manage your account through the 10 years. So if a student wants to transfer from one school to the other, they need to go through the account and fill out another scholarship acceptance form. So you can do that here. It also shows your history with the Kalamazoo Promise. So it will show how much we've paid out, how many credits have been used, how many are remaining, and the grades that we receive from the school that you're attending. We recommend that students check this at least once a semester to make sure that everything's accurate. If you're checking it much more often than that, then your social life must be about as desperate as mine. So, anyway. Also on the website of your account, you have access to all these documents. So you don't have to file them at home, remember where they were. You can always find your application, your scholarship acceptance forms. It's all there. You can print them out and all that good stuff. Payment process, and we're getting close to the question period that we've all been talking. We do not pay any funds to students. So any hopes you had of taking your $70,000 and going out and buying a new Tesla or something, sorry. And we pay after the semester starts. So schools don't bill us until after what's called the drop ad period. So usually you have a week or two at the beginning of every semester to kind of adjust your schedule based on your first interaction with the profs or whatever, find out you don't really like this person and you don't want to spend 12 weeks with them and you change your schedule and stuff. However, it should look like we paid before the semester starts. So the schools will apply the promise to your account because they know we're going to pay. And we paid out $180 million. We're pretty good for our word. And so they'll put it on your account. So the thing to remember is look before the start of the semester to make sure your promise is on your account. If it isn't, contact financial aid at your school first. If you have problems with them, then contact us. We do not control putting the awards on. We authorize schools to put awards on, but they have to put them on. So that's why we say contact the school first. We've been working with most of them for 17 years now. It's a pretty solid process. We get in trouble when there's some turnover at schools sometimes, but all in all, it's a pretty smooth process. Let's see. Just to reiterate, the 3 steps: register your account, submit your application, retake SATs, ACTs if your schools require them. Some of them no longer require these. You should be applying or have already applied to your colleges. They do some early admissions. I will say it was probably a decade ago, maybe more than that. The University of Michigan offered $10,000 a year to early admitted students from Kalamazoo on top of the promise. And it only went to those who had applied early. So it's never happened again, but it's another good reason to apply early just in case somebody else decides to be Santa Claus. Apply for other scholarships. Kalamazoo Foundation, I already talked about that. Complete your FAFSA. You can do it earlier now than you used to be able to do it. Submit your scholarship acceptance form. Attend orientation at the school that you want to go to. All the schools want you to be successful. And part of being successful is understanding what they have available to you. And the best way to get that information, or one of the best ways, is through orientation. All right, questions. So I would ask everybody, if you can, to please stay for the questions, because there's a good chance if you leave, they will ask something that you wish you would have heard. The other thing is, it's just easier to hear the responses if we can stay for a little bit. So, again, we'll have tours, Chromebooks. So, any questions? Yes?
So I just want to make sure. So you said with step 3, you can't complete that until you are accepted to the college you want to go to.
Yes, because, so the question was, you can't complete step 3 until you've been accepted. And that's true. The main reason it's true is you won't have an ID for that school until you've gone through that process. So, but as soon as you do that and you've been accepted and that's where you want to go, you can turn that in.
Yep.
A lot of students won't do that until spring because it's, I think like typically after March 1st when they kind of give out the award offers of all the financial packages. Yes?
My only question is, so if you want to start off at a community college, what is a next process for the next 2 years that you have to transfer? How does that work with the problem?
How do you transfer your promise? Great question. So at any point in time, as long as you're in reasonably good standing academically with the promise, you can transfer from one promise institution to the other. What you would do is you go onto your student portal and go to the forms section and fill out another scholarship acceptance form. So we need one for each school that you attend. And so that's all it takes. And once we have that, then that new school will know about your promise of work. Thank you. Anything else?
So what if I have a student that's interested in, like for instance, Grand Valley offers a combined BS and S degree, so there's like 5-year, how does the promise scholars work that?
So how does a promise work with a BA master's program? And the promise covers up to the point that a student has a bachelor's degree. So you cannot get a bachelor's degree from most of these schools until you apply to graduate. So just because you met the graduation requirements may not mean that you have to apply for graduation. So some students have gotten a couple of extra courses by waiting to apply for graduation for a little bit, but we do not cover graduate level tuition. Michigan State's teaching program, the teaching internship is charged at a graduate rate. We cover that program, but we only cover it at the undergraduate rate. So, yes, sir.
Excuse me, mine's a two-part question because earlier it said that you have to go have 12 credit hours continuously. But earlier you had said that some lifestyles might mean that you have to work and they try to work around that. So what happens if you take your full year, you realize, okay, I need funds for board or room. What happens after that? Because you wouldn't go continuously for the 4 to 5 years at the 12 credit hours.
Yeah, so the 12 credit hours, and I probably didn't explain it well enough. So you need to be full-time unless you can't. In essence, so you can start and stop as much as you want during the 10 years. If there comes a time where a student needs to be part-time, they contact the Promise office and we can let the school know that it's okay to award them for that semester or that period of time as less than full-time. We also have some students who have accommodations in KPS all the way through, and we can approve a student to be part-time the duration of their scholarship. So if there's any concern about the full-time requirement, we can work with a student on that. The disadvantage for students going part-time is it takes longer, and we have yet to see a year where tuition did not go up. So the last credits are the most expensive credits, so the sooner you can get to the last credits, the less expensive it's going to be.
So my second question was, it said you had to keep a GPA of 2.0, and I believe you said earlier that your first year was like 0.8 or whatnot. So what happens if, the other young lady said that she did really good in high school, or I'm sorry, didn't do well in high school, but did great in college. So if you're under that 2.0, what do you have to do after that to make sure you still get the Promise because you're not meeting that 2.0 requirements?
Yeah, so students who don't meet the academic requirements for a given semester, there are two options. One, there's a retirement fund that I have set up that they can contribute to. and then we will waive, go back to the standing. The second one that is used most of the time is we will extend probation for a semester and give students a chance to get back on track. Now, sometimes, as they mentioned, your GPA is really tanked. And one semester won't get your cumulative GPA back up to 2. So we evaluate it every semester. So as long as a student does okay that next semester, we will continue the award, and hopefully eventually that gets above 2.0. So, yeah. Anything else? Don't remember that late. I guess you know what that all. Anything else? Any questions online?
We do. We got a couple. So does a student have to fill out the FAFSA form in order to get the promise?
Okay, so the question is, do you have to complete the FAFSA to get the promise? No. And if you do complete the FAFSA, it doesn't impact your promise. So the Kalamazoo Promise is what's called the first dollar award. So it's awarded before any other financial aid. And 99% of the times, that's what the colleges and universities do. There are students who may not utilize their promise because they have other scholarships that are restricted to tuition and fees, and then they have to make a choice. But you don't have to fill out the FAFSA. You will never get less than what we guarantee you as far as the 100% tuition or 75% or whatever it is. That will be applied first. So I think that's an easy answer.
All right.
Oh, another question.
Was it for the bachelor's degree, you have to have 145 hour credits? Is that right?
So how many credits for a bachelor's degree? So the minimum requirement to receive a bachelor's degree is 120 credits. But it varies greatly from one major to the other, and some degrees require multiple majors or minors, combinations of that. So, so we provide up to 145 credits, and it's only the credits we pay for, by the way, too. So a lot of students are taking AP classes or, dual enrollment, early middle college, and so they're bringing credits with them to their post-secondary journey. So you may not need 120 promise credits to complete a degree if you brought in credits. And the good news about doing those as programs is it does offer you more flexibility to add other majors and minors and things like that, and still have them covered by the promise. So is that good?
All right. So this kind of speaks to how good our pathway coaches are, because Datavi already answered it in the comment section, but figure we lift it up here. So where are the pathway coaches located? This one specifically for Norix, but maybe you all can kind of share where you're located in the schools.
I'm the Lower North Pathway coach again, for the people in here and people online. I'm located in the library Monday, Wednesday, Friday. For the most part, sometimes we're out for a conference, but mostly I'll be there all throughout the week. And as I mentioned too, you just go to somebody, ask where I am, ask where the basketball coach is, they'll pretty much find me, and we'll get you connected and situated.
So I'm located inside of Phoenix Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and also virtually for KILT and K-1 students. I'm located in the Student Success Center right between Mr. Chambers and Ms. Bridges.
And I'm located at Kalamazoo Central, so I am in the counseling office, so you have to access my office by going through the main office, so it's kind of easier to find me. Also, I have my location in the signature of my email, so whenever I send out emails, you can look there and find it too.
Can you be enrolled in 2 schools at one time?
You can be enrolled in 2 schools at one time. Can you be enrolled in 2 schools at one time is the question. Yes, however, we will only pay for one of them. So We have students who take classes at both KVCC and Western. That's probably the most common one. I don't think we've had anybody have us pay KVCC instead of Western yet. But yeah, so we only pay one school a semester. And the summer term, Western has summer 1 and summer 2, but we treat that basically as one semester. So if a student's gonna take summer classes, we will pay that at one school. So, yes.
Are there any exceptions when the schools collaborate to have an associate's degree that then transfers to a bachelor's degree?
No. So there at this point, there's no exceptions. Typically, students will get their associate's degree and then transfer to the other school. And frankly, they can also transfer to the other school and then back transfer their credits to get their associate's degree. So that really hasn't been a significant issue, at least at this point in time. So, yes.
Can you explain, earlier you said like if your student's getting 75% of the promise, you're not necessarily going to have to pay the other 25%. What did you mean by that? I think that's what you said.
Yeah, so the question about 75%, 25%, that was related to the private schools.
Oh, okay.
So if all the other schools, it's whatever the percent is, the percent, but at the private schools, we pay the same rate as the University of Michigan School of Liberal Arts. And the college makes up the difference. If a student is less than 100%, they pay the percentage of that University of Michigan rate, essentially. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I use my promise to study abroad?
No, you can't, Willow, because you've already graduated with your bachelor's. No. So, Willow asked about study abroad and the Kalamazoo Promise. So, while we don't cover all the expenses for study abroad, we cover the normal in-state tuition for the credit hours that students are enrolled in to do their study abroad. So if a student is doing study abroad, it's administered by the school that they're attending to. We will get billed by them for normal tuition and we will pay them. We will not pay any extraordinary expenses like travel or immunizations or all that good stuff. But we have a lot of students who have taken advantage of that opportunity to be able to study abroad.
Say I'm at Michigan and I come home for the summer, can I go to Western?
Yeah, so the question is, Nellie was asking, bringing up the point about two schools. So we don't pay two schools during the same semester. However, you can move your scholarship around during the school year, and a lot of students will take summer classes at an institution other than the school that they're attending. For instance, if they're at Michigan or Michigan State, they come home and they may take a class or two at Western. And basically go on to your account again and you fill out a new scholarship acceptance form for that summer transfer. So.
Yep. So can schools reduce or remove initial financial aid and work study offers after declaring the promise?
So this is a question about financial aid packages that are awarded. And this is where things we could spend the whole night talking about financial aid. The best thing to do, so the promise does affect the rest of the financial aid package. Federal laws and regulations dictate how much federal and state aid can be applied based on the FAFSA. So when they put together a package for a student, they include the promise, they look at the EFC, the expected family contribution from FAFSA, and then they can apply aid up to that point. What happens sometimes, and this is where we get very frustrated and families and students get very frustrated, is they put an aid package together before the student has said that that's where they're going on the promise. When they find out the student is then going to go there on the promise, they have to redo that aid package. And it will look like they're taking away aid. What should happen with the promise is a student should get the most free aid possible with the promise being applied. So when they redo the aid package, the first things that should go away, I believe, are loans. And I don't know where work study goes, if that's next or how that works, but with the promise, a student should get the maximum amount of free financial aid they possibly can. But it will change the aid package, and it's frustrating for all of us. So the best thing to do to avoid that confusion is as soon as you know where you're going to go, complete your SAF and get it in, because then the school can put the award package together with the promise on it. So.
Cool. And then does the promise pay before other scholarships?
Does the promise pay before other scholarships? As I mentioned before, the promise is considered a first dollar award. So typically, again, in like 99.9% of the situations, they'll put the promise on first and then they'll apply to other scholarships. The only issue that may come up with other scholarships, the promise can only be applied to tuition and fees. It cannot be applied to those other expenses we talked about. And if you have another scholarship that also is restricted to tuition and fees, then at some point, if you get 100% tuition and fees for the promise, you're not going to utilize that other scholarship, even though you were awarded it. And it isn't anybody trying to, shortchange you, but it's just the reality of college education funding. Yes.
I know that the Ohio Science Scholarship at Kalamazoo College includes some of these things that you don't cover, like books. How does that work? Would that Ohio cover like the portion above the University of Michigan?
So the question is, there's a great scholarship that's been around longer than the promise called the Ohio at K College. It's for math and science. It covers everything but board. What has happened since the promise was added to the private schools is they will apply your promise first, and then the Ohio will cover the rest of what they normally cover. So you will still get the room and board. You'll still get the room, the books. There's a research stipend. It's an incredible scholarship. If you're interested in math and science, K is a great school, and it's a tremendous scholarship. Frankly, you can take the Ohio to grad school, and I think just this past year we had a K student I think she was in physics or chemistry, you were able to take it to Yale, only Yale. And so she's going to Yale on the Ohio as well, I believe. So,
EQ 3.0.
Yes, EQ 3.0, right. So, yes.
Does having the Kalamazoo promise, does that affect like sports scholarships that you can receive?
Does the promise affect sports scholarships? All right. So here's my understanding about sports scholarships and the promise. So the only sports scholarships that I believe that really come in conflict with the promise, and it's really in a good way, is I believe all Division I basketball and football scholarships have to be a full ride. I think I'm right on that. So if you get that, you won't get the promise, but you also won't need it. The other sports scholarships, it's like any other financial aid. So what works for our student athletes who want to go on to these other schools is they will be able to apply the promise first and then the sports scholarship. And by the way, most sports scholarships are not full rides. Most of them are partial rides. And at Division III schools like these private schools, they can't actually offer you that athletic scholarship. They didn't used to be able Yeah,
Like
so,
Spring Arbor and stuff, like at Spring Arbor and like Olivet, they have scholarships for athletics, and that's why he's asking, because some of them have.
do they not?
Yeah, Division two, Division three, and NAIA schools.
Yeah.
Well, not Division three, they don't offer athletics, but Division two and NAIA,
Yeah.
they offer hard.
Yeah, Division III, as far as I knew, you couldn't offer sports scholarships officially. Now, they're doing other things to get student athletes. And that's an advantage with the Promise, because they can recruit Promise athletes. And I think there are more of our student athletes who are able to continue to pursue their sports because of the Promise. So at four-year universities, we have a number of our students who have gone as preferred walk-ons because they had a Promise. So, yes.
Are the slides that you did, are those available online, or is the meeting recorded?
This meeting is recorded. Last night's was recorded. You can see more of me than you ever cared to. But all this is online. The short videos that we have are online. So all this is available.
Got one more.
One more question. Oh my God.
So is all the information in the student portal available to students that have attended college before, Promise students that have attended college before but haven't yet graduated?
So is the student portal available for past graduates of KPS, basically? Yes, every student who has ever been on the Promise or eligible for the Promise has an account at the KalamazooPromise.com. And you can set it up if you've never set it up. The one issue for older students who haven't done that is you need to remember your KPS ID. If you don't, as Melissa pointed out in the video, there's a little form that you fill out if you don't, and we will get a hold of you and help you set that account up. So. Just a reminder, I don't know whether I said this earlier, I forget it now, but we appreciate all of you coming. Frankly, all of you probably would walk through this process without our help, or would get to us to ask for help. Where we really need help is we need you to help us get to the students who aren't here. So, speak to your classmates, your neighbors, and help them understand this process, know where the resources are, know about the coaches, because we are not getting enough of our students to take advantage of this opportunity. COVID and the higher minimum wage has lured people away to a false sense of security that's going to pop. So we really want students to use this. They have 10 years, so if you know past graduates of KPS who haven't utilized their Promise, you remind them that they're still eligible. And we want them to use this scholarship. So, and thank you all for your time, attention, for all the questions, and good luck with the rest of the year.
Thank you.
What can a promise mean to a community? Well, it depends on who made the promise, what the promise was for, and for how long it will be held. For the Kalamazoo Promise, it was a group of anonymous donors who asked themselves a simple question: what could we do to invest in youth to transform our community? With that in mind, the Kalamazoo Promise was announced by Dr. Janice Brown in 2005 with the declaration that students who graduate from Kalamazoo Public Schools and meet the basic requirements will receive up to 100% of tuition and mandatory fees paid for at any in-state public community college or university. This sent a shockwave throughout the community and country as a movement sparked with Promise programs launching all over the United States. The cultural impact was felt perhaps most significantly when President Barack Obama visited Kalamazoo to deliver the commencement speech. Despite the external excitement, the early years saw the Promise administered behind the scenes by a single man, Bob Jorth. Today, with a staff featuring over 50% Promise scholars, the Kalamazoo Promise has now moved into our new home in the heart of downtown Kalamazoo. Designed to be a hub for student support and community collaboration, thousands of students have used their scholarship to earn post-secondary degrees and vocational certificates. This investment in human capital has been promised in perpetuity, which means it's not going away, and there's much more work to be done. But together, with our community, our Promise team, and Kalamazoo Public Schools, we will strive to help every student find their path. So what can a promise mean to a community? Everything.